The emergency alarms echoed through the massive space station like the death cries of dying stars. Ambassador Krell watched the chaos unfold from his crystal viewing chamber, his translucent body pulsing with nervous energy. 12 species had never gathered in such urgency before, not in the 3,000 years since the Galactic Union was formed. Today would change everything. The station orbited Titan's Hope, a neutral world where no weapons were allowed and no wars could be fought. It was the perfect place for what many already called the most important decision in galactic history. Through the massive windows, Krell could see the fleets of different species maintaining their distance from each other. The Vorthak crystal ships looked like floating diamonds. The Nereid vessels moved like liquid metal through space. The insectoid hive ships buzzed in perfect formations that hurt to look at. Inside the Great Council chamber, representatives took their positions around the central platform. Each species had their own section designed for their unique needs. The aquatic Nereids floated in spheres of their home ocean water. The plant-like Sylvans had brought soil containers that glowed with bioluminescent moss. The gas-breathing Zephyrins moved in their pressure suits like living clouds. Krell moved to the center of the chamber, his crystal form catching the light from a dozen different suns. As the current council chairman, the burden of this day fell on his shoulders. He activated the holographic displays that surrounded the room, showing star maps and data streams that painted a clear picture of the problem they faced. Fellow beings of the Union, Krell began, his voice translated into 12 different languages simultaneously. We gather today because our very way of life faces a threat, not from war, not from disease, not from natural disaster, but from chaos itself. First hologram showed human expansion across the galaxy. Red dots marked human colonies, growing from a single system to 47 in just 200 years. It was a rate of expansion that terrified every other species. The Vorthak had taken 3 millennia to colonize 12 systems. The ancient Sylvans had spread across only 20 systems in their entire 5,000-year history. Ambassador Flux of the Nereids swam forward in her water sphere. Her dolphin-like form moved with graceful anger. They ignore our territorial claims, she said, her words creating bubbles that popped against the sphere's surface. They build cities on worlds we have marked as sacred. They mine asteroids that belong to others. They act as if the galaxy is theirs to take. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The Hive Queen Zara clicked her mandibles in what passed for applause among her people. Her compound eyes reflected the holographic displays as she spoke. The humans reproduce too fast and spread too far. They have no respect for the natural order. They question everything. They change everything. They touch. Grove Singer Elm of the Sylvans rustled her leaves in what might have been sadness. Her voice came from her entire body like wind through a forest. We have tried to teach them our ways. We have shown them the beauty of slow growth, of patience, of harmony with natural cycles. They listen politely and then do exactly what they planned to do from the beginning. Krell nodded and activated the next set of displays. These showed human technology and military strength. The numbers were disturbing. Human weapons development had accelerated at an impossible rate. Their ships were already matching Vorthak crystal technology in some areas. Their soldiers showed a disturbing willingness to fight against impossible odds. They do not understand. The caste system that has brought us 3,000 years of peace, Krell continued. In human society, a farmer's child can become a leader. A soldier can become a scientist. A scientist can become an artist. They change roles as easily as changing clothes. This chaos spreads wherever they go. The Zephyrin delegate drifted forward, his gas form swirling inside his containment suit. My people have monitored their communications. They speak of something they call human rights, as if all humans are equal regardless of their natural abilities or social position. They reject the idea that some are born to lead and others to follow. This thinking is like a virus that spreads to other species. More displays showed the evidence. On worlds where humans had established colonies, other species had begun questioning the old ways. Young Vorthak had started asking why they could not choose their own crystal formations, instead of accepting the ones assigned by their elders. Nereid juveniles had begun swimming in forbidden patterns, creating art instead of following traditional migration routes. The most damning evidence came from the insectoid worlds. Hive Queen Zara's mandibles clicked rapidly as she spoke. Individual, drones have begun thinking for themselves. They ask questions. They make suggestions. Some have even left their assigned hives to explore the galaxy alone. This is impossible. This is madness. This is the human influence. Krell felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. Every species in the chamber looked to him for leadership, for a solution to the problem that threatened to tear apart everything they had built. The old ways, the careful balance, the system that had prevented wars for millennia, all of it was cracking under the pressure of human chaos. There is only one solution, he said finally. The humans must be removed from our space entirely. Not destroyed, for we are not a cruel people, but banished to a place where their chaos cannot spread to others. The vote was swift and unanimous. Even the peaceful Sylvans agreed that exile was better than allowing the continuing corruption of galactic order. The Void Sector, a region beyond the galactic rim that no civilized species had ever explored, would become humanity's new prison. Ambassador Alex Reed of Humanity stood in his observation box, his face pale but determined. He had listened to the entire proceeding without being allowed to speak in his species' defense. Now, as the council prepared to adjourn, he finally found his voice. "You're making a mistake," he said, his words echoing in the sudden silence. "Humanity has brought innovation, art, and progress wherever we've gone. We've solved problems that stumped your scientists for centuries. We've fought beside you against pirates and natural disasters. This isn't justice, it's fear." Krell looked at the human ambassador with something that might have been pity. "Fear of chaos is wisdom, Ambassador Reed. Your species threatens the very foundation of civilized society. The decision is made. You have 1 standard year to gather your people and prepare for transport to the Void Sector." As the council dispersed, each species returning to their ships and their worlds to spread the news, Krell remained in the chamber. He stared at the star maps showing human colonies, soon to be empty. He told himself this was necessary, that sacrificing 1 chaotic species would save 12 ordered ones. He had no way of knowing that this decision would doom them all. The transport ships came at dawn over New Tokyo, their shadows falling across the city like the wings of mechanical vultures. Maria Santos stood at the window of her presidential office, watching as families loaded their belongings into cargo containers. Children pressed their faces against windows, not understanding why they had to leave their homes. Parents tried to explain something that made no sense even to adults. Exactly 1 year had passed since the Galactic Council's decision. Humanity had used every day to prepare, but no amount of preparation could make this moment easier. 47. Colonies across the galaxy were experiencing the same scene. Millions of humans packing their lives into boxes, saying goodbye to worlds they had called home for generations. The alien evacuation fleet was impressive in its cold efficiency. Massive Vorthak crystal ships hung in the sky like floating cathedrals, their surfaces reflecting the morning sun in patterns that hurt to look at. Nereid water vessels moved between them like liquid mercury, their organic curves alien and beautiful. The transport process had been planned down to the smallest detail by species that had mastered logistics over millennia. President Santos turned from the window as her aide knocked on the door. Tom Bradley entered, his face showing the strain of the past year. As humanity's coordinator for the exile, he had worked tirelessly to make the impossible task manageable. "The last transport leaves in 6 hours," he reported. "All human colonies have been successfully evacuated. Total population being relocated is just over 8 billion souls." Santos nodded, trying to process numbers too large to truly understand. 8 billion people being forced from their homes because 12 alien species had decided humanity was too chaotic to exist alongside them. The injustice of it burned in her chest like swallowed fire. "Any word from the colony ships that tried to run?" she asked. Tom's expression darkened. "The Vorthak found them yesterday. 3 ships with about 50,000 people total. They were brought back and added to the transport manifest. No violence, but no choice either. Through the communication networks, Santos could monitor similar scenes playing out across the galaxy. On Mars, the great terraforming project was being abandoned after 2 centuries of work. The red planet's atmosphere was finally becoming breathable, and now it would return to lifeless dust. On Europa Station, the ice miners were sealing the deep tunnels that had taken 3 generations to dig. The most heartbreaking reports came from the joint colonies where humans had lived alongside other species. On Harmony Prime, Sylvan families were saying goodbye to human neighbors they had known for decades. The plant beings wept sap as they watched their chaotic friends pack their belongings. On several Nereid worlds, young dolphins spoke in broken human languages, trying to understand why their playmates had to go away. "Madam President," Tom said quietly, "the Vorthak transport commander wants to speak with you." Santos straightened her shoulders and activated the communication system. The holographic image of Ambassador Krell appeared before her, his crystal form pulsing with what might have been regret. "President Santos," he said, his translated voice carrying an odd harmonic resonance. "I want you to know that this gives me no pleasure. The Council has voted to provide your people with basic supplies and equipment to establish yourselves in your new location." "How generous," Santos replied, not bothering to hide her bitterness. "Throwing us into the void with a survival kit." Krell's crystal body dimmed slightly. "The void sector is not the void despite its name. Our long-range surveys show several star systems with potentially habitable worlds. Your species is resourceful. You will survive and perhaps even thrive in your isolation. What you're doing is wrong," Santos said simply. "History will judge you for this." "History is written by civilized species," Krell replied. "In the void sector, there will be no history for anyone to write." The communication ended, leaving Santos alone with her thoughts and the weight of leading humanity into exile. She activated the global broadcast system one final time, knowing her words would reach every human being in the galaxy. "My fellow humans," she began, looking directly into the camera. "Today we leave our homes, but we do not leave our humanity behind. We are being sent away because we ask questions, because we dream of better futures, because we refuse to accept that some people are born to rule and others to serve. These are not weaknesses. These are our greatest strengths." She paused, gathering her thoughts. Around the world, families stopped packing to listen. On distant colonies, miners and farmers and scientists set down their tools. Even on the transport ships, people crowded around communication screens. They call us chaotic because we change. They fear us because we grow. They exile us because we will not bow down to their ancient ways. But remember this: our exile is not our end. It is our beginning. Humanity has always done its best work when the odds were impossible. We have survived ice ages and plagues, wars and disasters, and we have emerged stronger each time. Her voice grew stronger, carrying the conviction that had made her a leader. We go into the unknown not as refugees but as pioneers. We carry with us everything that makes us human: our curiosity, our courage, our refusal to give up. Wherever we end up, we will build something beautiful. We will create art and music and stories. We will love and laugh and dream. And perhaps, someday we will return to show the galaxy what we have become. The transport process took 3 months. The technology was beyond human understanding, involving manipulation of space and time itself. Earth's entire solar system was enclosed in a massive field generated by dozens of Vorthak crystal ships. Reality bent and twisted around them as they were moved through dimensions that had no names. Dr. Robert Kim had volunteered to monitor the process from a scientific perspective. The readings he recorded made no sense according to human physics. They were not just being moved through space but through something else entirely. The background radiation changed. The gravitational constants shifted. Even the light from distant stars took on properties that should have been impossible. When the transportation was complete, humanity found themselves in a region of space unlike anything in their databases. Purple nebulae stretched across the sky like vast aurora. Asteroid fields moved in patterns that seemed almost alive. Most disturbing of all, the radio spectrum was completely empty. No signals, no background chatter, no signs of life anywhere. Dr. Kim made his report to President Santos from the bridge of the science vessel Discovery. His face was pale but excited, the look of a scientist confronting the impossible. "Madam President," he said, "we're not just at the edge of the galaxy. According to my instruments, we're somewhere else entirely. The stellar formations don't match anything in our star charts. The background radiation is all wrong. I think they've moved us to a different region of space-time itself." Santos looked out at the strange purple sky surrounding Earth's new location. 8 billion humans were now truly alone in the universe, cut off from everything they had known. But as she watched, she saw something that filled her heart with hope. Construction ships were already beginning work on new orbital stations. Colony ships were preparing to explore the strange worlds they had detected in nearby systems. Humanity was already adapting, already growing, already becoming something new. The aliens had thought they were sending them to a prison, but they had no idea what they had actually done. They had set humanity free. The signal came during Lisa Torres' morning coffee, a habit she had maintained even in the depths of space where morning was just another word on the duty roster. She was reviewing navigation charts when the communication officer burst into the ready room of the exploration vessel Defiance, his face flushed with excitement and fear. "Commander," he said, barely able to catch his breath, "you need to hear this." 5 years had passed since humanity's arrival in the void sector. The strange purple nebulae that surrounded their new home had become as familiar as old friends. They had established colonies on 6 worlds and mining operations in a dozen asteroid fields. Life was hard but possible, and humans were doing what they did best, surviving and thriving against impossible odds. But the silence had always bothered Lisa. In all their explorations, they had found no signs of intelligent life. No ruins, no artifacts, no radio signals. It was as if this entire region of space had been swept clean of civilization. Until now, the communication officer activated the ship's speakers, and the bridge filled with a sound like whale song mixed with crystalline chimes. It was beautiful and haunting and completely artificial. Someone or something was trying to communicate. "How long has this been transmitting?" Lisa asked. "The signal started 3 hours ago," the officer replied. "It's coming from coordinates that show nothing on our sensors. Empty space as far as we can tell." Lisa studied the star charts, her mind racing through possibilities. The signal originated from a region they had mapped as containing nothing but cosmic dust and background radiation. Yet something there was broadcasting across multiple frequencies, with power levels that suggested technology far beyond current human capabilities. "Change course," she ordered. "Full sensor sweep as we approach and send word back to Earth Command. They need to know about this." The journey to the signal's source took 18 hours. As they drew closer, their sensors began detecting anomalies that made the science team gather around their instruments like children around a birthday cake. Space itself seemed wrong in this region. Gravity flowed in patterns that defied physics. Light moved in curves where it should have traveled straight. "Commander," called Dr. Wang from the science station, "you're going to want to see this." Lisa moved to the main view screen as Dr. Wang activated the long-range visual scanners. What she saw made her knees go weak. Floating in what had appeared to be empty space was a structure so massive it dwarfed anything humanity had ever built. It was larger than Earth's moon, but it was clearly artificial. The design was unlike anything in human experience. Organic, curves that flowed like water, surfaces that seemed to shift between solid and liquid states, and a central spire that twisted up into dimensions that hurt to look at directly. "It's a city," whispered the navigator. "A city in space." The signal grew stronger as they approached, resolving into something that almost sounded like language. The universal translator attempted to process it but could only provide fragments, concepts like waiting and guardian and ancient duty, and something that translated as "finally," repeated over and over. As the Defiance moved into docking, range sections of the massive structure began to glow with soft bioluminescent light. Passages opened in the hull, clearly designed to accommodate visitors. Whatever built this place had been expecting someone to find it. Lisa made the decision that would change humanity's understanding of their place in the universe. "Prepare an away team," she ordered. "Full environmental suits and maximum caution. We're going inside." The interior of the structure was even more impossible than the outside. Corridors stretched in directions that seemed to curve back on themselves. The walls were covered in symbols that moved and shifted when observed directly. The air itself seemed to hum with energy that the suit sensors could not identify. The away team followed the strongest signal deeper into the structure, their footsteps echoing strangely in the alien architecture. They passed chambers filled with what might have been technology or might have been art, organic constructions that pulsed with their own inner light. In the central chamber they found them. The Watchers were unlike any life form humanity had encountered. They existed as pure energy given form, beings of light and thought that moved through the air like living aurora. When they spoke, it was directly into the minds of the human visitors, bypassing ears and language entirely. "Welcome, young guardians," the voice said, filling Lisa's consciousness with concepts she had no words for. "We have been waiting so long for someone to take our place." Lisa tried to speak but found that in this place, thought was communication. "Who are you? What is this place?" Images flooded her mind, memories older than human civilization. She saw the early universe, young and chaotic, filled with life forms that existed beyond physical matter. She saw a war that lasted millions of years, fought not with weapons, but with concepts and ideas. She saw the creation of prisons designed to hold entities that could destroy reality itself. "We are the Watchers," the voice continued. "We were created by the first civilizations to guard against that which must never be freed. For eons we have maintained the barriers between this place and the rest of existence. But we are few now, and our strength fades." The images continued, showing Lisa the true nature of the void sector. It was not empty space at the edge of the galaxy. It was a quarantine zone, a region of space-time cut off from the rest of reality, and in its deepest regions, held by barriers that had existed since the dawn of time, were the Devourers. They consume existence itself, the Watcher explained. Not just matter and energy, but the very concept of being. Where they pass, things do not die. They simply cease to have ever existed. The first galactic civilizations sacrificed everything to contain them here. Lisa felt her heart pounding as she began to understand. The Galactic Council, they didn't just exile us. They sent us here to replace you. "They do not know," the Watcher replied, and Lisa could sense something like sadness in its communication. The knowledge of what this place truly is was lost. Long ago, they banished you here believing it was empty space. But fate, or perhaps something greater, has brought you to where you were most needed. More Watchers materialized around the human away team, their forms shifting and flowing like captured starlight. Lisa could sense their age, their weariness, their desperate hope that finally, after so long, they had found successors. "But we don't know how," Lisa said. "We're just humans. We don't have your powers or your technology." "You have something we never possessed," the lead Watcher replied. "You have the ability to grow, to adapt, to become more than you were. We were created as guardians, static and unchanging. But you can learn, you can evolve, you can become what the galaxy needs." The Watcher showed her visions of human potential, of technologies that could bridge the gap between matter and energy, of warriors who could fight entities that existed between dimensions. It was possible, but it would take time and training, and a fundamental change in how humanity understood itself. "The barriers are weakening," the Watcher warned. "We estimate perhaps 10 years before they fail completely. If the Devourers escape this containment, they will spread across the galaxy like a plague of non-existence. Every world, every species, every thought and dream will be consumed." Lisa looked around at her team, seeing her own awe and terror reflected in their faces. Humanity had been exiled to save the galaxy from their chaos. Now they would have to save the galaxy from something far worse. "Will you teach us?" she asked. "We will," the Watcher replied. "But know that this path will change your species forever. You will become something new, something that can stand guard against the darkness. The humans who learn to fight the Devourers will no longer be entirely human." Lisa thought of Earth, of the 8 billion people who had been cast out of their homes because they were too chaotic for galactic order. She thought of the children being born in the Void Sector, who would grow up knowing only exile. And she thought of the Devourers waiting in their prison, ready to erase everything that had ever mattered. "Teach us," she said. "Whatever it takes, teach us." The Watchers pulsed with something that might have been relief or might have been joy. After eons of solitary vigil, they would finally have successors. And perhaps, if humanity could learn fast enough and grow strong enough, the galaxy might survive what was coming. But time was running out and the barriers were already showing cracks. The celebration was supposed to last for 3 days, marking the 10th anniversary of what the Galactic Union called the Great Peace. Ambassador Krell floated in his crystal meditation chamber aboard the orbital station above his homeworld, watching the festivities through holographic displays. Ships from all 12 member species filled the space around the station like a constellation of different technologies and dreams. A decade of unprecedented prosperity had followed humanity's exile. Trade routes flourished without human pirates, disrupting cargo ships. Territorial disputes had become negotiation sessions instead of armed conflicts. The rigid caste system had stabilized, with each species settling comfortably into their traditional roles. Young Vorthak no longer questioned their crystal assignments. Nereid juveniles followed their migration patterns without deviation. Even the insectoid drones had stopped their disturbing individuality experiments. Krell allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The decision to banish humanity had been difficult, but the results proved it was correct. The galaxy had returned to the harmony it was meant to enjoy. Order had triumphed over chaos, just as it should. The alarm started as a soft chime in his meditation chamber, barely audible over the celebration music. Krell ignored it at first, assuming it was some minor technical issue with the station systems. But the chime grew louder and more insistent, joined by others until the entire chamber rang with warnings. His assistant, a younger Vorthak named Clear Thought Prism, materialized in the chamber with an urgency that shattered protocol. "Chairman Krell," she said, her crystal form pulsing with distress, "we're receiving emergency transmissions from the Deep Space Monitoring Network." Krell's satisfaction evaporated instantly. The Deep Space Network maintained sensors at the very edge of known space, monitoring for everything from rogue asteroids to unregistered ship movements. They had not sent an emergency signal in over 200 years. "Show me," he commanded. The holographic displays around his chamber shifted from celebration images to star charts and sensor readings. What he saw made no sense at first. The instruments were detecting massive energy signatures from the direction of the Void Sector, readings that peaked far beyond anything in their databases. "What are we looking at?" Krell asked. Crystal Mind Prism, the Union's chief scientist, appeared via holographic link from her laboratory. Her usually precise speech patterns showed signs of stress as she explained her findings. "Chairman, these readings are unlike anything we have encountered before. The energy signatures suggest reality distortions on a scale that should be theoretically impossible. Something is manipulating the fundamental structure of space-time itself." More reports flooded in from monitoring stations across the galaxy. All showed the same pattern: massive disruptions coming from the region where humanity had been exiled. Energy waves were spreading outward in expanding spheres, each one larger than the last. Could the humans have developed some kind of weapon? Asked Admiral Waverider of the Nereid fleet. Crystal Mind Prism's form flickered as she processed data streams. "Negative. These readings are consistent with dimensional barrier collapse. Someone or something is breaking through from outside our reality." The first breach occurred at 1427 Galactic Standard Time, near the mining world of Haven's End. The planet housed 3 billion beings from 4 different species, all working the rich mineral deposits that had made the system prosperous. The C monitoring station there sent a brief transmission describing a hole in space opening near the planet's largest moon. Then the signal cut to static. Within 6 hours, every ship that investigated the Haven's End system simply vanished. No debris, no distress signals, no trace that they had ever existed. Long-range sensors showed empty space where a thriving solar system had been just hours before. Panic began to spread through the Galactic Union as more breaches appeared. The pattern was always the same. Reality would tear open like fabric. Something would emerge from the tear, and everything within a gradually expanding radius would cease to exist. Not destroyed or vaporized, but erased so completely, it was as if they had never been. Krell found himself in the Union's war room, surrounded by military leaders and scientists who had no answers. The holographic displays showed breach after breach, opening across the galaxy. The Zephyrin gas clouds were the first major population center to disappear, taking 400 billion lives with them. The ancient Sylvan Grove worlds followed, their millennia-old forests simply ceasing to be. "What are they?" demanded Hive Queen Zara, her compound eyes reflecting the horror on the displays. "What are these things that can erase entire worlds?" Crystal Mind. Prism had been working without rest, analyzing every scrap of data from the monitoring stations before they went dark. Her findings were more terrifying than anyone had imagined. "They appear to be entities that exist outside normal physics," she reported. "Our weapons pass through them without effect. Our shields provide no protection. They do not destroy matter and energy. They consume the very concept of existence itself." The military tried everything. Massive battle fleets engaged the entities emerging from the breaches, only to vanish the moment they made contact. Planetary defense systems fired, their most powerful weapons achieving nothing except the erasure of the defending worlds. Even the Vorthax crystal technology, which manipulated matter at the atomic level, proved useless against enemies that operated beyond the atomic scale entirely. In desperation, the Union's historians began searching ancient databases for any reference to similar phenomena. What they found changed everything they thought they knew about galactic history. The records were fragmentary, hidden in archaeological sites and translated from languages so old they predated the Union by millions of years. They spoke of the First War, a conflict fought at the dawn of galactic civilization against entities called the Devourers. The ancient texts described a terrible victory that required the sacrifice of entire civilizations to create a prison at the edge of reality. "The Void Sector," Crystal Mind Prism said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It was never empty space. It was a quarantine zone created by the first galactic civilizations to contain these entities. The implications hit everyone in the war, room at the same time. By banishing humanity to the Void Sector, they had not just exiled one species. They had doomed the Guardians who were supposed to keep the Devourers contained." "The humans," Krell said, understanding flooding through him like ice water. "We sent them to the place where someone needed to maintain the barriers." More ancient texts revealed the truth about the Watchers, energy beings created specifically to guard the prison. But the Watchers were failing, their numbers diminished by eons of constant vigilance. They had needed successors, new Guardians who could adapt and grow to meet the changing threat. Instead, they had received 8 billion confused humans who had no idea where they were or what they were supposed to do. The breaches were accelerating now, appearing faster than they could be tracked. Entire sectors of the galaxy were going dark as the Devourers spread like a plague of non-existence. The carefully maintained peace of the past decade crumbled as species after species fell to an enemy they could not fight or even understand. In his crystal chamber, surrounded by the collapse of everything he had worked to protect, Krell made the hardest decision of his life. He opened a communication channel to the Void Sector, not knowing if anyone would answer or if humanity even still existed. The response came after several minutes that felt like hours. President Santos appeared on the holographic display, older than when he had last seen her but still carrying herself with the dignity he remembered. Behind her, he could see what looked like a war room filled with humans in strange armor that seemed to shift between solid and energy states. "Ambassador Krell," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "I assume this is about the breaches." You know what's happening? Krell asked. We've been fighting them for 5 years, Santos replied. Ever since the barriers started failing. The Watchers taught us what they could, but we've been learning the hard way mostly. Krell felt something that might have been hope mixed with shame. President Santos, the Galactic Union formally requests humanity's assistance in containing this threat. We will meet any terms you set. Santos smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Any terms, Ambassador? Even dissolving your precious caste system? Even treating all species as equals? Even giving humanity a leadership role in whatever comes after? Through the communication link, Krell could see human soldiers moving with purpose, carrying weapons that seemed to be made of crystallized thought. These people had spent 10 years learning to fight entities that existed beyond normal reality. They had become something new, something that could stand against the impossible. Yes, he said. Any terms? The galaxy is dying, President Santos. We need you. Then you'll have us, she replied. All of us. Every human who learned to fight in the dark spaces between worlds. But understand this, Ambassador. The species that comes back to the galaxy won't be the same one you sent away. We've become something else, something the universe needed us to become. The communication ended, leaving Krell alone with his thoughts and the weight of his species' fatal mistake. They had exiled humanity because they feared chaos. Now they would depend on that chaos to save them from complete annihilation. In the distance, another star system went dark as the Devourers continued their feast. Time was running out, but for the first time since the crisis began, Krell allowed himself to hope. Humanity was coming home. The first human ships emerged from the dimensional rifts like ghosts returning from the dead, but these were not the same vessels that had been forced into exile 15 years earlier. Admiral Alex Reed stood on the bridge of the New Dawn, watching through the view screen as reality twisted around them. His ship was a hybrid of human engineering and Watcher energy manipulation, existing partially in normal space and partially in the dimension where the Devourers lived. The transformation of humanity had been more profound than anyone could have imagined. Those who fought the Devourers directly had undergone changes that went beyond the physical. Their minds could process concepts that existed outside normal reality. Their bodies could phase between dimensions at will. They had become something that was still recognizably human, but elevated to face threats that pure humans never could. Reed himself was an example of the change. His hair had turned silver-white during his first encounter with the Devourer, and his eyes now held flecks of the same purple energy that filled the void sector's nebulae. When he concentrated, he could perceive the mathematical structures that held reality together, the delicate framework that the Devourers sought to consume. Admiral, reported Commander Torres from her position at the tactical station. Lisa had been among the first to undergo the Guardian transformation, and the changes in her were even more dramatic. Her skin held a faint luminescence, and when she moved, shadows seemed to trail behind her as if she existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. We're detecting massive Devourer activity in the Centauri sector. 3 breaches are active and expanding. Reed nodded, his transformed mind already calculating battle strategies that would have been impossible for his old self to comprehend. Around him, the bridge crew worked with the fluid efficiency of beings who had spent years learning to fight the impossible. They no longer relied solely on instruments and sensors. Their enhanced perceptions could detect Devourers directly, feeling the way they bent space-time around themselves like predators stalking through tall grass. The human fleet that emerged from the dimensional rifts was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, ships that could exist in multiple realities at once, crewed by beings who had learned to weaponize concepts like hope and determination. The transformation had not been without cost. Of the 8 billion humans who had been exiled, only 3 billion remained. The rest had been lost in the early battles against the Devourers before humanity learned how to fight back effectively. But those who survived had become something extraordinary. Open communication with the Galactic Union fleet, Reed ordered. It's time to coordinate our response. The holographic image of Ambassador Krell appeared on the bridge. But the proud crystal being Reed remembered had been replaced by someone clearly broken by the catastrophe engulfing the galaxy. Krell's crystal form was dim and fractured, showing stress patterns that spoke of profound guilt and fear. "Admiral Reed," Krell said, "thank you for responding to our call. The situation is worse than when we last spoke. 17 systems have been completely consumed. The Devourers are spreading faster than we can evacuate populations." "We know," Reed replied. "We've been monitoring the breaches from our dimension. The pattern is accelerating because each consumed system feeds their growth. But we've learned how to stop them." Hope flickered in Krell's crystal form. "How?" Reed activated the tactical display showing the gathered fleets. The Galactic Union had assembled every available ship, millions of vessels from 12 species representing the last organized resistance to the Devourer invasion. But they were armed with conventional weapons that could not even touch their enemies. "Your ships can't hurt the Devourers because they exist outside normal physics," Reed explained. "But they can support ours while we engage them directly. The key is coordinated reality manipulation combined with what the Watchers called conceptual warfare." The battle plan was unlike anything in galactic military history. Human Guardian ships would phase into the dimension where the Devourers existed, engaging them with weapons that targeted their very existence. Meanwhile, the Union fleet would maintain reality anchors, preventing the Devourers from escaping into normal space where they could cause more widespread damage. The first major engagement took place in the Vega system, where a massive breach had opened near the primary star. The Devourers were attempting to consume the star itself, which would destabilize the entire stellar region and create dozens of new breach points. Reed led the assault personally, his ship phasing between dimensions as it approached the primary Devourer. The entity was vast, larger than most space stations, its form constantly shifting as it existed simultaneously in multiple states of being. Where it touched normal matter, that matter simply ceased to exist, leaving expanding spheres of absolute nothingness. "Engaging primary target," Reed announced over the fleet communication network. "All Guardian units implement Pattern 7. The human ships moved in formation that would have been impossible for normal vessels. They existed partially outside of space-time, allowing them to occupy the same coordinates while remaining separate. Their weapons were equally impossible, focused beams of pure will and determination, concepts that the Devourers could not consume because they represented the opposite of entropy and despair. The battle was unlike anything anyone had ever witnessed. Reality twisted and flexed around the combatants as they fought in dimensions that had no names. The Guardian ships flickered in and out of existence, their crews using enhanced perceptions to track enemies that conventional sensors could not detect. The key moment came when Reed realized the true nature of their advantage. The Devourers consumed existence, but they were vulnerable to something that transcended mere existence: the human capacity for hope in the face of impossible odds. "All Guardian units," he broadcast, "implement the Hope Protocol." Every transformed human in the fleet focused their enhanced minds on a single concept: the unshakable belief that they would win, that life would triumph over emptiness, that existence was stronger than void. This focused will became a weapon, more powerful than any technology, striking at the core of what made the Devourers possible. The primary Devourer convulsed as the concentrated hope struck it. For the first time since the breach had opened, it began to retreat, pulling back from the reality it had been consuming. Other Devourers throughout the system felt the effect, their forms becoming less stable as doubt entered their consciousness. "It's working," Torres reported from her dimension-spanning sensors. "They're withdrawing from normal space." But the real breakthrough came when Reed realized they could do more than just push the Devourers back. Using techniques learned from the Watchers, the Guardian ships began weaving new reality barriers, sealing the breaches and trapping the remaining Devourers back in their prison dimension. The process was exhausting and dangerous. Several Guardian ships were lost when their crews pushed too hard, their consciousness scattered across multiple dimensions. But slowly, systematically, the human fleet began closing the breaches one by one. The final battle took place at the original breach point near where Haven's End had been. The largest concentration of devourers had gathered here, attempting to widen the tear in reality, to allow even more of their kind to escape. If they succeeded, the invasion would become unstoppable. Reed led a combined assault of every remaining Guardian ship and the entire Galactic Union fleet. The conventional vessels could not hurt the Devourers directly, but they provided something equally important: the focused will and determination of trillions of beings who refused to accept extinction. As the battle reached its climax, Reed made a decision that would be remembered for millennia. He ordered his ship to phase completely into the Devourer dimension, knowing it was likely a one-way trip. There, at the heart of the breach, he and his crew began the process of sealing the tear from the inside. "Admiral," Torres said over the communication link, "the dimensional stresses are off the charts. Your ship won't survive the closure." "I know," Reed replied, "but someone has to hold the barrier in place while it stabilizes. Make sure they remember why we did this." The sacrifice worked. The primary breach collapsed, taking with it most of the remaining Devourers. The few that escaped were quickly hunted down by other Guardian ships, their threat neutralized one by one. In the aftermath, as the galaxy began to count the cost and plan for rebuilding, President Santos addressed the combined species from the bridge of her flagship. She was old now, her hair white and her face lined by years of bearing impossible burdens. But her voice still carried the authority that had guided humanity through its darkest hour. "The crisis is over," she announced. "The Devourers are contained and the breaches are sealed. But the galaxy that emerges from this will be different from the one that went before. The old ways, the rigid castes, the fear of change, all of that died when we had to fight for our very existence." She paused, looking out at the diverse fleet surrounding her ship. Human vessels with their reality-bending technology flew alongside Vorthak crystal ships, Nereid biovessels, and the craft of all the other species who had learned to work together in the face of annihilation. "We return to you not as exiles, seeking forgiveness," she continued, "but as guardians who have earned our place through sacrifice and blood. Humanity will take its position in the new Galactic Council, not as subjects but as equals, and together, all of us, we will build something better than what came before." The reconstruction took decades, but when it was complete, the galaxy had indeed become something new. The rigid caste system was abolished, replaced by a fluid society where individuals could rise based on their abilities and choices rather than their birth. The fear of change that had once dominated galactic thinking gave way to an appreciation for growth and adaptation. Humanity took its place as the guardians of the galaxy, their transformed descendants maintaining watch over the sealed breaches and training new generations to fight threats that existed beyond normal reality. But they were not alone in this duty. Other species began volunteering for Guardian transformation, adding their unique perspectives to the defense of civilization. In the end, the aliens learned that their fatal mistake had not just been banishing humanity. It had been underestimating the power of a species that thrived on adversity and refused to accept defeat. The very chaos they had feared became the galaxy's salvation, proof that sometimes what appears to be disorder is actually the highest form of order. And in the strange purple nebulae of the void sector, the last of the Watchers finally allowed themselves to rest, knowing that their long vigil was over and that the galaxy was in capable hands. Hands that had been shaped by exile and hardship into something strong enough to guard against the darkness that waited beyond the edges of reality. Humanity had come home and the universe was safer for it.